In my starts course, every 2 weeks I do coaching calls and I give people feedback on their artwork. Last week I did these coaching calls, and one of them, there were only, I think there were about 6 people who attended on one of the calls. And after I had given the feedback on the artwork that was submitted, we had a whole, like about 40 minutes of extra time. And in that time, I thought that I was just filling in time, I just opened it up to a general discussion. And we got talking about grief. And one of my students had recently lost her mother. And this is, I lost my mother about 5 years ago. So this is something that I have experience with, and I think everybody has had experience losing somebody at some stage. Or everybody does at some stage in their life. And I found when first of all, my first great loss was my father. And when he died, I threw myself into my artwork. I hadn't painted for many years. And I sort of, at that point when he died, it became really apparent to me that I had to get on with what I wanted to do with my art. I had sort of let it drift. I had put it on the back burner. It was something that I always wanted to pursue and find out what I could do, but it was difficult and it was hard to prioritize a time for it when there were lots of other needs with a growing family and and working and all that sort of thing. But at this point, when my father died, I thought, now or never. I have to really prioritize this. And so I did. And I started like within a couple of months after his death. And at the beginning, it was a real working through of the grief, of the memories of the loss of him. And even when I say this now, it makes me feel emotional, but it is a very emotional subject. So what did I do? I got a lot of things that reminded me of him. I took photos when we were down at his house after he had died. I took photos of his bedroom, of his wardrobe, of his inside his workshop in the garage. And these were all really personal things to him. And after we had sort of cleared out the house a little bit of his things, or that was actually after my mother's death, I gathered things like stamps from his stamp album. He loved butterflies, and so I took photocopies out of books, of his lovely butterfly books. I just gathered everything that reminded me of him. And I used these as collage, and I drew him, and I just sort of brought him into my art. And even though this makes me emotional now, at the time when I did it, I would do it and there would be tears streaming down my cheeks. But it really helped. And over the years, when my mother died, the same thing. I did exactly the same thing. And it really helped. And I've had a lot of time to think about why it was so, why it was so helpful. And I think it was because at that time, I wanted to draw them close to me. And all I didn't have them, but I had the things that they had left behind, and I had my memories and the things that connected me to them in a really meaningful way. And so those were the things that I put together and I would use in my art. And even though they were things that would trigger a lot of emotion, the fact that I was not just sitting and looking at them and being immersed in the sadness that I didn't have them anymore, I was looking for ways to use that sort of impetus, all that sort of data, all that memory bank, and physical things that I had, pictures, photos, things, I could use them and create something new. And I think that's why it is so healing. And it moves you, it takes you from being lost in that space where you've lost the person and you just feel, you just feel that loss. It takes you with them into a new place where you can create something and something new starts. And that is the transition that you have to go through when you grieve. You have to adjust and go to this new life where you start a new life without them. And using art and putting all this stuff into your art and creating something new that is just an embodiment of all their memory and all that meaning that you have for them, all the stuff all the things that you remember. Moving that forward and putting it into something new is just such a powerful step. It's almost like the tangible step. It's like it's like the real thing for the metaphor that you're about to do, like the moving into the new life. Hard to explain, but that's kind of why it's so powerful. And so I just really wanted to talk about how, if you're grieving, and it might not be you might not be grieving for a person, you might be grieving for a loss of circumstance, or, we all experience loss in some ways in our life at various times. And bringing it into your art is really, really powerful and moves you into that next phase of life really gently and at your own pace, and you feel all the feelings, but you move forward. And I think that's it's really I know for myself it was very healing. And one of the paintings that I did after my mother died, actually I called Ascension, because I felt like it was a painting where, while I was painting it, I was thinking of her moving from here to her new place. And this is Ascension. After my father died, I didn't really produce anything. It was very new in my art journey. I was just getting back into my art, so I didn't produce anything that I really hung on to. But the process of doing it actually got me into my art, and I wouldn't be standing here today if I hadn't have started that process then. So it is a very powerful move, and something that I think is a gift that art gives us, or creativity gives us. People have written songs, about their grief and things. So it's really a very powerful way of working through grief. So I just thought I'd leave that with you. If you have any experience of this, I'd love to hear about it in the comments, and it would be helpful for other people to read as well, because just that conversation that I had with my group on that coaching call, I've had so many emails from people who have watched the recording and or been part of that group, and they found that conversation so it was like the stars aligned. It met them right where what they needed to hear on that day, and it was really, really moving and really powerful. Okay, that's what I have for you this week.